to Startup Series, another event in Global Entrepreneurship Week Fort Worth 2020. Today, I am super excited to have the co-founder and president of Global Entrepreneurship Week, the whole thing. And he started this over a decade ago, and it has now grown to 180 countries around the world. And we are so glad to have Jonathan Ortmans joining us today to tell us about his story, tell us about the impact that GEW is having around the world, and how Fort Worth fits into this larger global picture of entrepreneurial-led economic growth around the world. Jonathan, welcome to Fort Worth and welcome to Startup Series.
Cameron, it's great to be joining you. Delighted to be in Fort Worth virtually. I guess we're all everywhere virtually these days. I was going to be there in person, but thanks for letting me join you at least virtually today. I promise as soon as all this is over, I'll be there in person.
Outstanding. Well, we will love to have you in person, but we'll take virtual Jonathan for now. So Jonathan, give us a sense about GEW 2020. And I know it's different with the pandemic, and I know a lot of countries and a lot of cities are probably doing similar events to what we're doing. But give us a broad swath of what's going on around the world. What can we expect here in Fort Worth? And what are you seeing in some other countries around the world? Just how big is GEW?
Well, with this pandemic, we obviously, I think everybody didn't quite know how it would impact GEW. Ironically, I think we've seen it scale for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think, if anything, it's been easier to engage more people in activities where they can join virtually. But I think, secondly, the imperative, the importance, the need of a campaign that helps each country find a way to reach more of its citizens, to get more people to consider the path of entrepreneurship is even more important. I think there's a lot of people that are concerned about lost jobs, a lot of people concerned about companies going out of business, and a lot of people who I think are quite aware of the fact that it's entrepreneurs that generate almost all the new jobs in our economies, and that it's the entrepreneurs who will be in that position to help us pivot from this pandemic and to not just restore a lot of those jobs, but to sort of rebuild our local economy. So what we can expect is exciting. We've got formal agreements with 180 nations, and they're going to be focusing on these campaigns on a few themes. Of course, you'll see lots of conferences, lots of events, lots of interactive sessions. We'll be seeing a lot of pitch competitions. I know there's going to be one down the road in Dallas-Fort Worth that you got Mark Cuban keynoting, for example. But we'll have pitch competitions being done in communities across the world. But what we're really seeing with these activities is a focus on how do we rebalance our ecosystems, our communities, our entrepreneurial ecosystems to really make it possible for more people to engage. Entrepreneurship is one of those things that at the beginning, it always had a tendency to attract just people that sort of went to business school, as we used to think. And now, of course, it's really an opportunity for anybody. And so certainly we're going to see how do we make this about getting the entire community involved. We're also going to see a lot of policymakers involved. There's a large number of mayors, government officials, ministers, because governments are wrestling with this question, which is, we have to put a lot of investment into rebuilding our local economies through entrepreneurship. But how do we do it? I mean, most policymakers I talk to, the first thing they tell me is, look, I'm not an expert on, interventions to support entrepreneurs and what we really need and what we don't. And so I think you've got a lot of policymakers doing at least the bare minimum, which is using the bully pulpit, standing up there, reminding people that the door is open to everyone. And I think that third point is the most important one, which is what we're really seeing around the world is a focus on inclusion. We've all got lots of data now to support that it's not just the right thing to do, but it's the smart way to build really impactful, strong local economies that deliver lots of new firms and new jobs, which is to make sure that you've got lots of diversity, make sure that no one's left out, because at the end of the day, economies suffer. Any kind of economy suffers if you leave people out. And so one of the things we're really focusing on this year is trying to go to those communities that were so small they didn't really engage in entrepreneurship, but we're also trying to go to community groups that otherwise have maybe historically being unrepresented in our entrepreneurial ecosystems. And we're obviously doing this with an intent to remove barriers, to identify and remove barriers to more entrepreneurs that want to consider the path of more citizens who want to consider the path of entrepreneurship. So it's going to be a very exciting week. We're going to see, of course, there'll be a few glamorous people involved. We'll have a number of high-profile activities, but at the end of the day, the exciting stuff is when it's really done at the very local community level.
That's great. I know inclusion is one of the themes here in Fort Worth that we are really going after, because I agree with you. You know, entrepreneurship is kind of the great equalizer, right? It's probably cheaper and easier and faster to start a company now, and anybody can do it than it probably ever has been in the history of the world. And so how do we get more people thinking about that? And that's what I love about Global Entrepreneurship Week, is just that inspiration that it leaves us all with. But can you highlight, and you talked about, you know, the Mark Cuban pitch event, and you highlighted a few others. Are there any specific events that you're really excited about this year that are going on in locations around the world?
Well, we're seeing, of course, a dramatic reduction in large live events. So, you know, some of the most significant events typically that we would have held in terms of really big scale events are difficult to bring in on Zoom. But for example, we'll be kicking off Global Entrepreneurship Week with participation from all the countries that are involved, all 180 countries. So to some degree, that's a big message. But we're also going to see the importance of some government-led events, and I know we've got those happening throughout Europe. I know in Asia we're seeing some major engagement from governments, and they're all, you know, focused on that question, which is, you know, where do we invest our resources going forward? But we're also going to see some interesting data released. We'll be releasing the IDE report that will compare the performance of entrepreneurial economies across the world, and you'll see a substantial amount of editorial engagement. One of my favorite sort of sets of events, though, that you'll see is Startup Huddle, which is the global sort of application of the 1 million cups model, which I think you, of course, are familiar with, but people in Fort Worth are very familiar with. I know we've got close to 150 communities coming together and all kicking the tires on the 1MC model, all doing a startup huddle, as we call it, in their community. And so while there'll all be lots of little events, we consider that to be one of the biggest things happening during GEW. Another really big thing that we're doing is that we're very proud to say that we've been able to raise millions of dollars that we're going to give away in $10,000 or $20,000 grants to people that have kind of slipped between the stools in terms of the support from their community. And we're doing that in partnership with Hello Alice, which is an AI platform that you all should be familiar with. And we've got some great investors, KKR, one of the big investment firms, but we've also got the eBay Foundation and MasterCard and a few other companies that have been really great philanthropic supporters of actually, let's put some cash in the hands of some of these guys that otherwise might struggle and have to close down during this time. So whether it's giving away money, whether it's engaging government, or whether it's involving, as you know better than I do, building communities one entrepreneur at a time through something like the 1MC model, I think you're going to see a wide array of activities. One other thing I'll point out is we're seeing all over the world videos come in on our I Am an Entrepreneur video, where we've encouraged people who are already an entrepreneur to tell a quick story, because what we want to try to do is ask citizens in Fort Worth and the whole DFW in Texas, whatever community you're from, if you've never thought about getting involved in a startup community event, our hope is that you'll give it a second thought. And the way to do that is to take a look at an entrepreneur. I mean, I guess it could be someone famous like Mark Cuban, but also, we'll have Pitbull down the road in Miami doing some things with, actually some other VIPs that will get involved. But whoever it is that you think is your role model, to take a look at that entrepreneur and say, do I see myself in that? Could I see myself possibly doing that or doing that with somebody else? And so that's going to be one of the really big highlights of GEW for me, which is to shed the spotlight on some of the narratives of some of these people, because to me, it's about reaching out to your neighbors and getting somebody new, just one person each, to say, you know what, I'll show up at some startup community events, I'll kick the tires, and maybe this might be something that could be good for me. And of course, we all know the great thing about startup community events in Fort Worth or anywhere else is that there's so many things you can show up and people will teach you about the entrepreneurial culture, welcome you, make you feel included, and it doesn't matter. I mean, it's all for free. It's a question of you want to give your time. So, it's just like a startup weekend event. You show up and, you're welcome.
That's great. Fantastic. And I'm a big believer in that too. Who are those role models? Who are the people that may want to start a company can look to and see that it can be done in their city or their area as well. And so glad to hear the Startup Huddle is still going on strong. That's such a fantastic program. But Jonathan, I want to go all the way back.
Credit to the Kauffman Foundation for conceiving of this model. It's great. And, like every great philanthropy, the Kauffman Foundation is really encouraged when people, innovate a model, and that's what this has done. And of course, great personal credit to you, Cameron, because I know you were perhaps, if not the founder, the co-founder of that concept. So we'll consider that to be a Fort Worth innovation.
There we go. I'll claim it. Yes, thank you. No one's more surprised by that thing took off than me. But it was a lot of fun, and still involved with it here locally. But take us all the way back. You mentioned the Kauffman Foundation. Take us all the way back to those initial discussions around what became Global Entrepreneurship Week. And how did it start? What purpose was it created to serve initially, or what problem was it going to solve? And how did it get going?
Yeah, I mean, the Kauffman Foundation got an invitation to go to the UK and see something they did in 2007 called Enterprise Week. It was a speaking opportunity. The Kauffman Foundation doesn't really do very much outside the United States, of course, but it was an opportunity because it was an invitation from then former Prime Minister Gordon Brown. And his concept was, because he controlled all the schools, unlike in the United States where we have, dissipated school management, he put activities in the schools throughout a week because he wanted to get more kids to be enterprising. And we came back, tested that idea in the United States at the Kauffman Foundation. But then we were faced with this question, it seemed like at that point there was a general perception that entrepreneurship was owned by the United States. Indeed, a perception by people outside the United States that all entrepreneurship sort of came out of Silicon Valley. And we thought we've got to really dispel that myth. We've got to make sure that the doors are open to more people, having witnessed what they were doing in the UK. So really it was born the next year as a global activity, co-invested by the Kauffman Foundation and by the government of the United Kingdom. And to our amazement, we got, I think first year, 30 or 40 countries signed up to do it. And then it wasn't long before we were up to where we are now with 180 countries endorsing this notion of entrepreneurship. So it really got started as a more of a youth campaign, trying to get more young people to consider entrepreneurship at a time when we really didn't have startup communities, startup culture. It wasn't really featuring on the minds of many people. It was more sort of limited to a few engineers, but mostly people coming out of business school. So that was really the origins of it. Great insights on behalf of the Kauffman Foundation to say that they should invest in this. And I want to be really, really clear. This is only made possible through the generous support of the Kauffman Foundation and the leadership and moral support of the Kauffman Foundation. And that it's been a great way, I think, that we've been able to maintain, when it comes to entrepreneurship, the view that the world has of the United States, that, we are still that shining beacon on the hill when it comes to entrepreneurship. And we're not just trying to do well with entrepreneurship, but we're trying to help show other people how to do it. So the examples that are set in Fort Worth and other communities across America are really role model examples to communities that really struggle. to be able to carve out their economic future. So I think it's been a great something we think that Mr. Kauffman would be very proud that we set an example for others to follow.
That's great. So I know that the parent organization is called GEN, the Global Entrepreneurship Network, and the week is called GEW, right? And that's what we're talking about. What's the relationship between the two? And can you kind of explain that to us a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Actually, the GEN is an organization that was really born, created by the communities that celebrate Global Entrepreneurship Week. I mean, we ended up with 20,000 partners within the first few years. And one of the things that they kept saying is there's more work to be done here than just celebrating our entrepreneurs in November and having a festival. And so GEN is a 501c3 organization, based here in the United States that runs Global Entrepreneurship Week. And GEN is focused on a broader mission of how do you make it possible for anyone, anywhere to start or scale a company. We're focused on building healthier entrepreneurial ecosystems, both locally, nationally, but indeed looking at the global entrepreneurial ecosystem. And what this really involves at the GEN level is we have a whole range of global programming and policy, research, startup community, and other entrepreneurial support organization type programs. And then, of course, a lot of activities to connect and engage people. We do a big event called the Global Entrepreneurship Congress. We do a ministerial with governments, but it's all focused around that narrow area of the power of entrepreneurship to build economies, create jobs, and to create opportunity for people where there may be lots of talent. And so that's really what GEN has been doing. And GEW is one of the core pillars of GEN's work now. And the part where we think we're doing massive community building, we're helping more people engage and get involved. We're making it open to everybody in an inclusive way to say, this is really something for which everyone is welcome to come and try your hand, and where people can learn that this is not about just necessarily starting a company and spreadsheets and marketing. This is about testing an idea, forming a team, collecting data, going through the iterative process of figuring out a better way of doing something. And then, if it works, when you make it work, if it doesn't work, you just recycle the concept and the people to something else. If it does work, then of course, as we all know, you get to launch and scale a proven, tested concept. So that's really the work of GEN, to try to make this more legitimized in all communities across the United States and indeed across the world. And Global Entrepreneurship Week is a great way to reach out and welcome more people into this exciting, dynamic world of figuring out new ways of doing things.
That's fantastic, and what a great service that you've provided to all these countries that just want to learn more about entrepreneurship and create more self-determination among their people and solve problems in new ways. I love it. You mentioned the Global Entrepreneurship Congress. What is that, and when is the next one?
Well, the Congress was something, once again, originated by the Kauffman Foundation. We held the very first Congress. I think you may have even been there in 2000. We held it just over 10 years ago at the Kauffman Foundation in Kansas City. The Congress is where we wanted to bring the leadership of entrepreneurial ecosystems around the world together to share knowledge, to share networks, and to be able to collaborate and work together. It originated mostly with the organizations coming together that did GEW. And the reason we created it was we suddenly realized they were like, we really want to meet each other, and we're all doing the same campaign in all these communities and countries, but we don't know each other. But we couldn't meet each other during GEW because we're all in our communities executing GEW. So that's how it originated. It's grown into this amazing thing, Cameron. It's just fantastic. We end up with close to 8,000 people. Nations bid every year to host it. The next one will be a year from now. It'll be in the Middle East. It's going to be held with all 180 countries sending delegations, some as many as 100 people each, who are essentially government leaders, entrepreneurs, of course, some founders, investors, but I'd say about 50% of the people that come are, as Brad Feld says, not the leaders, but the feeders. So those of us who are there to, provide the right kind of capital at the right time, those are there to provide the accelerators, the educators, and of course, all of the startup community organization and models. So the idea is it's a big opportunity for those people who are involved in building entrepreneurial ecosystems to come together and see what's happening in other parts of the world. And so I'll just give you an example. We have a ministerial where the ministers come together. They're not coming up with some great, for example, international agreement, because there isn't. It's not like trade. There isn't a disagreement among entrepreneurs. But what they're doing is sharing what worked in their country as an intervention to help accelerate entrepreneurship. And so for example, I know that Canada, Italy, were locked together in hacking. How do you come up with a perfect startup visa to get easier for countries to be able to have a special category to let people come in and build and create companies and create jobs? So we, on a policy level, and then we have a lot of research data that's shared. But I think most importantly, it's about building trust. I always like to say about the GC, you could come and leave your passport at the door, all 8,000 of you, pick another one up on the way home, and you'd fit right back in, because I know it's easy for us, particularly in the United States, to look at our differences we have in different parts of our country. But it's even easier to look at it politically anyway around the world. But it's amazing when you look at these startup communities and these ecosystem leaders, and they're just all amazing. They're all focused on how do we improve the lives of our fellow citizens, and how do we, yes, I want to help myself and my family, but I don't want to do it at the expense of not helping others at the same time. And it's just an amazing community. So over the years, of 10 years, we've got solid cores of people that have a deep trust of each other. And that's enormously valuable at a time when many of our, shall I say, geopolitical circumstances are such where our nations have become a little bit more isolationist, sluggish economies, and perhaps, shall I say, there's been a rise of populism maybe around the world. And so it's one of the areas that we think is vitally important at this point for every community to understand, which is it's really very open source, very welcoming when you're working from startup community and ecosystem to another one. So that's what we try to do at the GC, give people access to each other, give them a chance to build better ecosystems, and of course, give our entrepreneurs a chance to shine.
That's great. And it is a fantastic event, no doubt about it. So, Jonathan, you've talked about this at a global level. Take this down to Fort Worth. Take this down to our local level here. How can we, or what advice would you give to Fort Worth on how we can maximize our experience during Global Entrepreneurship Week 2020?
Yeah. Well, I think the key thing is there's a few what we call signature activities. There are things that are sort of in a box, ready to go. So if you're thinking about getting involved and you want to actually do something, the value of the Zoom generation is you can do things pretty short notice. So you can, of course, go to GEW.co, which is the website. We can give you access to not just all the things happening, but all the tools that are available to you to be able to do something yourself if you would like to. So for example, in Fort Worth, if you've got a lot of teachers, we've got some great activities for schools and classrooms to do. And we've learned this year that during the time of the pandemic, that many of the teachers are actually us parents at home. I've got certainly two people that were, two of my kids that were at home of my three that we're teaching from home. And so there are activities that that you can do as a teacher, just by way of example. There are going to be, one MCs happening. There's going to be other events if you don't want to host your own event. But if you want to host your own event, there is simple, there are ready to go activities that you can do. If you're not so much interested in that additional Zoom engagement, you can obviously attend some of the other events that are registered. And I know Fort Worth has a lot happening. But you can also engage through social media. We clearly, this is a campaign. It's about reaching more of your neighbors, of your family, of your community, and getting them to say, by the way, the world, our community in Fort Worth, we need more people trying their hand at this. We need more people considering trying to be a starter. reach out to people who maybe don't have the confidence, the self-confidence to maybe consider this, and take them along the journey, engage with them. So what I think people in Fort Worth can do is certainly at the leadership level, we hope that the political leaders will continue to emphasize the same message, that it's important that more people in Fort Worth get involved. At the community level, I hope you'll reach out and get somebody else involved, or reach out through social media and just endorse entrepreneurs. But then I also want to stress, if you're someone who's out of work, this is I love to talk to, and I do a lot of it, groups of unemployed people. If you're out of work, you are in for a great opportunity if you've not ever tested getting involved in startup communities. This is a great time, because the biggest thing that you need in order to get involved in entrepreneurship is time. You need time to go to engagement, and there's so many things that we can give you to do. So I certainly hope that Entrepreneurship Week for you in Fort Worth is a chance to just think about this. Is this going to be part of my future? Could it be? Maybe not right now, but maybe in the future. Take a look at the entrepreneurs involved, take a look at the activities, and just think this could be something that is part of what I try to get involved in the future. And of course, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your stories, and there's plenty of ways to do that through the campaign.
Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us today on Startup Series and being a part of our Global Entrepreneurship Week here in Fort Worth. I know you're going to be a part of many, many weeks across the country and across the world, and grateful for the time you're spending with us. Keep up the great work. Fort Worth is in, so we'll look for many more years in the future of Global Entrepreneurship Week here. We've just seen tremendous growth in our ecosystem here because of it, and we will take you up on that offer to get you to Texas before too long. So thanks again for your time today, and happy Global Entrepreneurship Week.
Well, happy Global Entrepreneurship Week to you. Thanks for including me, and we really wish everybody a safe and healthy Global Entrepreneurship Week, and look forward to engaging with people afterwards. We'd love to learn from you, and Cameron, we'll stay in touch. Let's do more things throughout the year. It's going to be an important year for entrepreneurship to help with our local economy.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Well, very good. Well, thanks, Jonathan, and safe travels if you're traveling to any other countries this year.